So I wanted to make a video about the best weapons in SCUM on a PvE low population server. I may point out what weapons are pretty good on a PvP server, but that will be a side note. So starting out with the bows. By the way, this wiki is a little outdated. The auto crossbow, I don't believe that's in the game anymore. And the Blackhawk crossbow is it's pretty nifty. I believe it uses the rifle skill, but it takes too long to load. So it's like a first strike weapon. You can fire off one shot and then you better switch to something else. So it's kind of useless. um, unless you can remain in hiding and undetected, then yeah, so it's a definitely a stealth weapon, because if the puppets notice you, and that goes especially for like a horde. When a horde spawns in, there's a certain percentage chance that they're going to be immediately aggroed on your location. And I think that even goes for like respawning puppets in an encounter. So it's like the puppets have, I don't know if it's through their BCU network, they've triangulated your location and that's how they know where you are. Um, but it's like they're omniscient, so they know your location, and it doesn't matter too much, I guess, if you are stealthy. They're coming for you. So you need a weapon that you can reload quickly. So that would be these improvised or recurve bows, and then also now there's the Manchu bow and the takedown bow. I think I might have used the Manchu bow, but I haven't used the takedown bow. So, and it seems to me that with these, you can let an arrow go before you've fully pulled the string back. And I'm not sure if that lets the arrow fly uh, at like less of a pull weight or at a slower speed. I haven't really tested that. I'm not sure how I would test that, but it seems to me, at least in past versions of the game, that I have been able to let an arrow fly even when I haven't been able or haven't had time to pull the string back fully. Like, for example, if I was using a bow with a pull weight that was too much for my character's strength, it seemed like I could still pull the string back after knocking an arrow. I could pull the string back to the point where I didn't have the strength, and then it would let the arrow fly anyway. So it seemed like even bows that were rated for a heavier pull weight than I could handle, that they were still useful. I could still launch arrows from them. I don't know if that's still the case. But anyway, the improvised and recurve bows are more useful than the uh, improvised or Blackhawk crossbow, just because of how quickly you can reload an arrow or knock another arrow. Now, from what I understand, the the draw time on the compound bows is longer, and a lot of players don't like the compound bows for that reason, which is unfortunate because, you know, a compound bow is a higher tier weapon. So you would think it would have higher tier performance. And I had thought that it's easier to pull because of the pulleys. It's easier to pull the string on a compound bow in real life. But, you know, that's my impression. I don't have a lot of experience with them, but that seemed to be the case to me. And if the string is easier to pull, then it should be also quicker to pull. But anyway, so moving on. I haven't tested the flare gun as a weapon in a while. Last time I did, the flare would stop where it struck the puppet, and um, and then if the puppet moved, the flare would continue to burn, hovering in air where it struck the puppet. I don't know if that's changed now so that the flares actually bounce off the puppets, but really a flare gun shouldn't be a very good weapon unless maybe the person's wearing a ghillie suit. Maybe a flare would set a person in a ghillie suit on fire. But the flares just don't seem to adhere to the target enough to do the sort of fire damage you would expect from a flare. So the HS9 and the HS product SF19, you know, these are both good 9mm Glock type pistols. But you don't, it seems like you don't find them as often as you find a Block 21, which is the name for the Glock clone in SCUM. So, which being a Croatian firearm, you would think you would find them more often than a Block, but you know, the Glock is um, a very common pistol, though maybe not the one that's in 45 ACP like in SCUM. The only Glock that you find in SCUM is a 45 ACP version. But I don't know. I found I think I've found about half as many pistols and half as many magazines for these two pistols as I have for the Block 21. The improvised handgun is good in that it can fire, here it says handmade 50 cal handgun, but now the improvised handgun can fire any pistol cartridge, so it can handle universal pistol caliber cartridges. But the reload time, it's a single shot, and the reload time is quite long. So it's less than ideal for handling large numbers of puppets. The Judge 44 and the Serpent 357, and I think there's another 357, the Viper M357, and the Peacekeeper 38. They're all revolvers. You know, the larger the caliber, probably the more heavy hitting the caliber should be in the game. But they take a while to reload, and sometimes I think it's depending on your pistol skill, maybe. Your character doesn't seem to load all of the chambers. So you have to, at times I have to like tap R like 3 different times in order to load all 6 cylinders on the revolver, and that's not ideal. Plus, revolvers are harder to sound suppress, so I don't think you see any sound suppressors as attachments for these pistols in the game. So you're going to make some noise if you use one. But I know for probably the 357s and especially the Peacekeeper 38, I'm finding a lot of ammo for those. So much so that I've started carrying the 38 just to burn up the large amount of ammo that we have amassed for the Peacekeeper. And I think we're finding more than we're actually using. So that makes the Peacekeeper 38 a pretty good general all-around revolver for a SCUM PvE server that is low population. And by low population, I mean low population in players. So, which, I guess that has no real bearing on a PvE server, but it does affect the experience because without PvP, you have nothing to shoot at at longer ranges. Now the Kruger is basically a Ruger 22 semi-automatic pistol, or otherwise known as an automatic pistol, not full automatic. That's something different when it comes to pistols. So, but if you call it semi-automatic, I don't have a problem with that. It's less confusing for people who don't know too much about firearms. But the problem with the Ruger is that it has a 10-round magazine only, and um, that was a long-standing limitation of most 22 pistols until recently. Is that most of them had maximum 10-round magazine because of the rimmed cartridges. Larger magazines would result in jams and malfunctions, feeding problems. But I'd say in about the last 10 years, or maybe even the last 5 years, we've been seeing a lot more pistols on the market with much larger magazine capacities in 22 long rifle, but we don't have them in the game. But I was glad to see this pistol come into the game because there was so much 22 ammo in the game, and it was really hard to burn through it with the one bolt-action 22 rifle in the game. But now that the Kruger's in the game, I'm not finding much 22 long rifle ammo, and that's not very realistic given that 22 long rifle is a common round in Croatia. Now, 22 long rifle will take down a puppet if you pop them in the head, but now that armor has been implemented in the game, I don't know whether it is as easy to get headshots with the Kruger pistol or with the bolt-action 22 rifle as it used to be. Like even some of the lowest rated body armor is supposed to stop 22 long rifle. So if the armor's represented accurately, as in like the the Kevlar helmets in the game. They should be able to stop 22, unless, of course, you shoot the puppet straight in the face where the helmet isn't protecting the puppet and or NPC. So I would say this was a much more useful pistol in the game, but lately 22 ammo has been so rare, at least finding it, and the pistol itself, I've only found one so far, even though I've probably found about 20 of the Peacekeeper 38s revolvers. And that ratio is probably realistic too, because revolvers tend to be more accepted by the general populace, because they're less scary, So, moving on, the Tech 01 M9, otherwise known as the Beretta M9 or the Beretta 92FS. This pistol, in my opinion, is one of the best in the game, because 9mm is relatively common in the game. It has a fairly large magazine capacity. It can be fully accessorized with a tactical light, a suppressor, and even, I think, maybe not. I'm not sure if you can put a red dot sight on it or not, because really it should be the Beretta M9A4 that would allow you to put a red dot sight on it. The M9A3 and earlier models didn't have that ability. But on a PvE server, if you have enough magazines, you can fairly well play the game with just the M9, because it's that good, and because you don't have AI sniping at you from a long distance, like in, for example, Escape from Tarkov. The NPCs, the armed NPCs, tend to engage you at rather close distances, because they have a tendency to spawn in a mere 100 to 150 meters away, if not closer. So that doesn't leave much ability for them to stand off at 300 to 800 meters and snipe at you. Whereas in Escape from Tarkov, you'll have AI that's, for example, posted up on a tower because they spawn by location and not in a spawn bubble that follows the player, as with the new, a little over a year old now, encounter system that was brought into SCUM to replace the old encounter system. It used to be you could snipe puppets from like long distances, because you would see them there. But now they tend to spawn in at close distances. So on a PvE server, there's kind of very little need for long-range weapons, unless you're taking on mechs or sentries. or drop ships. So on to the rifles. Well, I guess we could talk about shotguns too. So, of course, these double-barreled shotguns, the DT11B and the DT11B short, are good starter weapons. You can reload them fairly quickly for a double barrel. And yeah, so I wouldn't count these out. Of course, the NPCs will use them against you to fairly good effect if you give them the chance. So let's say these are still good low tier weapons, and shotgun ammunition is fairly plentiful. The improvised shotgun, I'm not sure if this is now an improvised rifle, so that it's able to fire any kind of rifle or shotgun ammo. I'd have to check it out, but this is good because when you're starting out, it can take all sorts of ammunition. But again, it takes a long time to reload it. It's a single shot. The M1887, both the sawed-off version and the full-size version, these are okay as repeater shotguns, but sometimes it seems like the action binds up, or your attempts to chamber the next round get interrupted by a puppet who's gotten in your face. And then you're kind of left defenseless. I prefer personally the S-12M or the Tech 01490. I believe the 490 can take one more cartridge in the tubular magazine than the S-DAS can. The S-DAS is nice in that it's got a shorter overall length, so when you put a suppressor on it, it's not as long. And I think it's easier to accessorize the S-DAS. But yeah, these are the shotguns you want to get, in my opinion. And unfortunately, unlike DayZ, and usually SCUM's pretty good about imitating DayZ, it's sometimes one of the things that aggravates me about SCUM is that it seems like it's just taking its cues from DayZ, and rather than seeking out original solutions. But DayZ introduced a semi-automatic shotgun. And really, there are two more tiers of shotgun that we could have here in SCUM that we don't, and that is a semi-automatic shotgun, for example, like a Benelli or a Beretta 1301 or a Beretta A300 Ultima Patrol, or I think there's a Remington shotgun that's now very similar to the Beretta 1301, and those shotguns work really well. They're known to be reliable, and they're just devastating at close range. And they would be a welcome addition to the game. On top of that, you have either select fire or full automatic shotguns. I might add other semi-automatic shotgun solutions that you could have in the game would be the Saiga 12. Also, there's I think it's the Genesis. It's kind of shaped like an AR-15, but it's another magazine-fed shotgun like the Saiga 12. The Chinese make the JTS M12, AK, I think it's called. And even though it's made of Chinesium and it's incredibly inexpensive, um, the JTS M12 is known to work extremely well. And it looks like an AK, like a Saiga 12, kind of. But yeah, so that's another option. But yeah, there's the Genesis also that I think was used in John Wick. So you could have either a semi-automatic tube-fed shotgun like a Benelli or a Beretta or a Remington, or you could have a mag-fed semi-automatic shotgun like the Saiga 12, um, or the Genesis. And then Tokarev, I think, has some mag-fed shotguns also. Like one of them, or at least one of them, is a bullpup configuration. But personally, I would say either the Saiga 12 um, or the Benelli or the Beretta would be good choices for a semi-automatic shotgun. But moving on to select fire or full auto shotguns, you've got the Atchison AA-12 or the Daewoo USAS-12. Now it's kind of doubtful that either one of those is used much in Croatia. But I mean, SCUM is set in a futuristic setting, so if the SCUM devs had someone give them a hand with the design, they could design a completely original select fire or full automatic shotgun for Croatia, in the future. And I think most of us would be perfectly fine with it as long as the design looked realistic and theoretically functioned realistically, because you can kind of tell when a weapon is just designed to look like a gun, but the person designing it clearly has no idea how a gun actually works, versus designs that are made by people who truly seem to know how a gun works. If you ever want to see examples of that, the pencil and paper role-playing game from the 80s called 2300 AD or Traveler 2300, they had lots of fictional guns in it that actually looked like guns that could actually exist because they looked like they were designed to actually work. So the developers of SCUM could do something like that. If their argument is that the Daewoo USAS-12 or the Atchison AA-12 has never been used in Croatia, fine. Make your own futuristic select fire shotgun for the game. So that's a hole in the game that needs to be filled. Either, I would say, the semi-automatic shotgun and or the select fire shotgun, which would be even higher tier than the semi-automatic shotgun. So I've spent a bit talking just about shotguns. Now, moving on to semi-automatic rifles. Now, some of these rifles are not semi-automatic, but the way they work in the game, well, no, they don't even really function as semi-automatic in the game. They function as repeaters. So, like bolt actions, they require you to manually chamber the next round. Anyway, so we have the AWM, AWM, and the AWP. I always get these backwards. One fires 338 Lapua, and the other one fires 308. The 338 is going to have more range than the 308, but really, this weapon is not all that needed in SCUM at present on a PvE server because there are no threats at that distance that are going to be returning fire. You know, it's just maybe you could use them on mechs or dropships, but without PvP on the server, there's not much of a reason to have these. Although, just to caution the devs, I am not saying to remove them from the game because you put in so much work, on these weapons, and they should be in the game. It's just that in PvP, there's no reason for them, except as something to collect or resell, to display on the wall, because for one, the ammunition for these is pretty darn rare, although I found that the suppressor for the 338 Lapua version is pretty darn common compared to the 308. Then there's the Carbon Hunter. It's another bolt-action rifle. It fires 30-06. 30-06 is pretty hard to find in the game. And again, there's not much reason to have to reach out that far. Then there's the Hunter 85. And this is 22 long rifle, bolt action. And now it requires a magazine, whereas originally I think it must have been tube fed. And I'm not sure what the capacity on the magazine is. It might be 10, it might be 8, maybe it's even 12. I'm not sure. But again, I'm not sure how well the 22 long rifle is penetrating armor now that armor is working. At least that's what I thought to be the case. I believe that armor is working in the game, but even like the lightest ballistic body armor should stop 22 long rifle. But this rifle is still useful for popping puppets in the head, in the face, especially if you have a suppressor on it. So moving on, the Car 98, ammo's kind of hard to find for this one. It's kind of a nostalgia weapon. I mean, it functions great, as it should, especially if you put the ZF-39 scope on it. But again, it's like these high-power bolt-action rifles here. There's not much use for it on a PvE server. The M1 the M1 Garand rifle, it is semi-automatic. Its feeding mechanism is a bit more complicated. Like the clips that you use to feed it have to be fully loaded. You can't partially load them. And then I'm not sure if they discard to the ground. I haven't tested that. When you empty them, I'm not sure if the clips discard to the ground or if they discard to your inventory. But if they discard to the ground, then Yeah, it's not easy to find clips for this rifle. It might be easy to buy them at the trading post, I'm not sure. But it does shoot 30-06. Here it says 30 caliber, but it is 30-06, which is 30 caliber, but um, it's more precise to say it's a 30-06 rifle. And even though it fires a less powerful 30-06 round than what you typically um, have on the market these days. Anyway, if I remember correctly, the sighting solution, like, you can't really get a good scope on it, although, you probably should be able to customize this, like, with actual gunsmithing to get it to accept a better scope. But yeah, this is kind of another nostalgia weapon. Then there's the M1891 Mosin Nagant, another high-powered bolt-action rifle. Again, the ammunition for this is not that easy to find, but I've been having some fun with this during this wipe. I really like, and I'm sure it's much the same for the other high-powered bolt-action rifles, but I really like how fast it can take down a puppet with one shot to the body. So yeah, but so I have found that I could put it to use at close range. So I imagine you can do the same with these other rifles, but um, except for the ability to put down something with one shot, uh, I think there may be better options for the ranges. You are typically engaging targets in SCUM. Then there's the M82A1, the Barrett Light 50 Browning machine gun, BMG. Uh, Not to say that this is a machine gun, it's not. This is semi-automatic. This is good for attacking mechs. Otherwise, you kind of don't need this either. The weight of it makes it prohibitive to use, so it's kind of something you want to cart around on a four-wheeler at least, or in the bed of your pickup truck. It's not something you really want to carry around on your person. Then there's the SVD. Oh, and this compares to a rifle that's not listed here, which is the SCAR DMR. The Fabrique Nationale SCAR DMR, it fires 38 and it is magazine fed, so that makes it more useful, and it's semi-automatic, just like the SVD Dragunov, which is magazine fed and semi-automatic. So these are two more useful rifles, the SCAR DMR and the SVD. Now they fire the same hard-hitting round as the Mosin Nagant, the M1891, the SVD does, and then the SCAR DMR fires the same round as either the AWM or the AWP that fires 308 also. But it can do so semi-automatic, which means if you need to fire off 10 rounds in quick succession, you can do that with this, which you can't with the others. And the SVD accepts a number of different scope solutions. You can either mount the POSP scope onto it, or you can use an AK rail to mount some other scope to it. So it's pretty flexible that way. The SCAR DMR cannot take the POSP scope, so it's limited, I think, to about one less scope than the SVD can take. Then we have the VSS VZ or Ventores. This is an intermediate sniper rifle. This is kind of like an urban sniper rifle. It's not meant for really long ranges. So this is a weapon that takes I'd say it's more useful than those bolt actions or even the SVD and the SCAR DMR. I think the magazine capacity is larger. It can take a number of different sighting solutions. It's integrally suppressed. So what's good about that is that you don't have to repair two separate systems. Like you don't have to use a toolkit to repair the suppressor and then a weapon cleaning kit to repair the firearm. You just use a weapon cleaning kit to repair the firearm with its integral suppressor. Of course, you can repair this with a toolkit and some VSS parts, as with any of the other firearms in the game, as far as I know. And this is really just the same as the AS Val, except with a different stock. So now we're moving on to like assault weapons, assault rifles. The AK-15, it's chambered in 7.62 by 39. It's basically the modernized AKM. Now, it takes a proprietary magazine in the game, which I do not believe it should. I believe it should take ordinary AK magazines. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think I am. So, yeah, so that's kind of a bummer because it's harder to find AK-15 magazines than it probably is to find either AK-47 or RPK magazines. So this weapon, you can suppress it. It's easy to mount various sights on the top. And I think also to mount I think you can mount a Beretta M9 flashlight to it easily. So it's got Picatinny rails so that you can mount accessories more easily. And it's it's a pretty cool looking rifle, especially if you're into AKs. Now, two rifles that came out before the AK-15 would be this has AK-47. I can't quite. Yeah, this is an underfolder. I believe this is supposed to be called an AKMS. Anyway, in the game it's called an AK-47. It's just your basic AK-47. You can use an AK rail to attach a sighting system to it. I think you can still put an AK-15 suppressor on it. Yeah, but as with any of these 7.62 by 39 rifles, it's not that easy to find ammunition for it. Which you would think It would be. Because let me see, is it, I think, let me see, where is Zastava originally based? Serbia. Okay. So Zastava, makes its own kind of proprietary AKs in Serbia, not far from Croatia. So you would think that AKs would be pretty darn common in Croatia. Um, but right now, as it is, it's not easy to find ammunition or even the weapons themselves in game, and that makes me sad. I mean, the ammo, the whole area should be awash in 7.62 by 39 ammo, but it doesn't appear that it is. And that goes for 22 long rifle too. It's like once they brought in the Kruger pistol, all of a sudden the amount of 22 ammo seemed to drop. So it like nullified the whole purpose for having the Kruger pistol brought into the game. And then there's the AKM. It's just basically a lighter version of the AK-47, but with a solid wood stock. Now, moving on, there's the AKS-74U, which fires the more modern 5.45 by 39 millimeter Russian ammo of the AK-74, but this weapon is not that common in the game, which might be accurate to the real world. Its magazines don't seem to be that common, and its ammo is not common at all from what I've seen so far. So I can't call this a weapon that's very useful in SCUM just because of how rare it is. Now, moving on to the AS Val, which is kind of like the like I don't know. It's if anything, it's like a more practical version of the VSS. I don't know if the VSS is supposed to be more accurate than the AS Val, but they're basically the same darn gun. And the nice thing about the AS Val is that when you put it in inventory, the side folding stock folds, so it takes up less space. You could put an AK rail on this or mount a POSP scope on it, the same as with the VSS from Vintorez. And I think I find the ammo for this to be a little bit easier to find than any of the AK ammo. So, and being an intermediate range weapon, this one is more useful. Although I do find that it can take 2 or 3 shots sometimes to drop a puppet with this. But again, it's integrally suppressed, so you only need to use a weapon cleaning kit in order to repair both the suppressor and the rest of the weapon. Or you can use a toolkit along with AS Val parts. Whereas a firearm in SCUM that has an external suppressor that's mounted onto the weapon, you have to fix the suppressor with a toolkit and then the weapon with a weapon cleaning kit or a toolkit plus the parts for that weapon. Now the M16A4 is in 5.56 millimeter NATO. It's not that common, and its ammo is not that common. The magazines seem to be a little bit more common than the ammunition. Now you can, because this is an A4, that means it has a flat top Picatinny rail. You remove the handguard and you can mount all sorts of sights on it. I believe you can mount the Beretta M9 flashlight to it. So it's flexible with accessorization. You can mount a Mark 18 suppressor to it. So it's pretty flexible, but it's not easy to find the ammo for it. Right now would be a good time to bring up the SCAR L, the SCAR Light, not the SCAR Heavy. And it is a version of the SCAR that's in 5.56 millimeter. I think it takes M16 magazines, whereas the SCAR DMR has to take its own proprietary magazines. It's equally accessorizable. Is that the word? As the M16A4. Yeah, but I haven't found any SCAR Ls during this wipe yet. I've found 2 SCAR DMRs so far. The M249 saw. This thing can gobble up so much ammo that is not easy to find, that it makes the weapon somewhat impractical. You can put sights on it. I think you can put a Mark 18 suppressor on it, but I could be wrong on that. You should be able to put a Mark 18 suppressor on it, but I think the use of this M249, because of how quickly it can burn through ammo, is for mounting it to your sidecar on your Zundep sidecar motorcycle, or to your airplane, but on a PvE server, I don't know how much you're going to be doing strafing runs on puppets or mechs with an M249, firing it from your airplane. So I'm going to move on. I don't really see this one. It's a nice addition to the game, but unless you're just overflowing with 5.56 millimeter ammunition, it's kind of a hard weapon to feed. Now, we don't have a picture for this one, so I'll go ahead and load it up from a web page. So we've got the Mac 10. You can also get a suppressor for the Mac 10 in the game. The version that they chose to add to the game was a 9mm version, rather than the more famous, I think, 45 ACP version. Usually I think it's the Mac 11 that's more remembered as 9mm, but here it says that the Mac 10 was chambered in 45 and 9mm parabellum. But if we look at the Mac 11, yeah, there it was, Mac 11. This tends to have like a longer rectangle box receiver, if you call it that. and it sticks out kind of farther back in the back. So this one was chambered in 380 ACP or 9x19 Parabellum. And then here's a picture of the Mac 11 with a shorter receiver down here. So, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so I was happy to see these in the game, just because, you know, it fills a niche. It's a small, compact weapon that fires a pistol caliber at a blistering cyclic rate in full auto. But again, unless you're awash in pistol ammo, this thing burns through ammo really fast for not a whole lot of payout. I found this weapon to be useful earlier in the game in Stalker 2 against bloodsuckers, because as they say about this weapon, that it is for gunfights in telephone booths, and the bloodsuckers in Stalker 2 would just get right up in your face. So as soon as they did, I would just pull the trigger and mag dump on them with this Mac 10, and that's when I started getting pretty good at killing bloodsuckers. Later, I would find the Spaz 12, which can be a semi-automatic shotgun, and then the Saiga 12, and then I found that to be more useful for cutting down bloodsuckers without expending a whole lot of ammo as the Mac 10 does. So this filled a niche, but because of how quickly it burns through ammo, it's not one of the more practical weapons in SCUM. Now, there's the Mark 18. Not the best picture. This is basically a short M4 or a short M16. You can accessorize it. You could put a suppressor on it, and then it's not that long with a suppressor on it. Again, 5.56 ammo is not very common in the game, so it's you have to be a really high tier player kind of rolling in the dough in order to finance your Mark 18 habit. So moving on from that, this brings us to the MP5. This is one of the more useful weapons in the game because 9mm is somewhat common. The MP5K being the shortest of them, you can put a suppressor on this and it doesn't take up much space. With an MP5 rail, you can put on various optics, and so it becomes a really practical weapon. With the suppressor, you can take down, you know, most puppets with headshots with it. The regular MP5, same deal. It's got a collapsible stock, so it doesn't take up that much space. You can put a suppressor on it. With an MP5 rail, you can put different optics on it. With an improvised flashlight, you can mount a flashlight to it. Yeah, so it's pretty great. It's pretty great because, I mean, it reaches out to puppet ranges without much of a problem. The MP5SD I like the best because it has an integral suppressor, which again means that you only need a weapon cleaning kit in order to fix the suppressor and the rest of the weapon. Or even just a toolbox plus MP5 parts, and that takes care of the whole package for you. put an MP5 rail on it, and now you can mount different optics to it. The RPK-74, it's got a longer barrel than the other AKs. You could put an AK rail on it, mount various optics to it. You can mount an AK-15 suppressor to it, but it's a longer weapon. There's a special RPK drum magazine for it, but that drum magazine will also go into the other AKs, but not the AK-15 as far as I can remember. Plus the regular AK banana magazines, if you want to call them that, will go into the RPK. So there's a nice real-world interchangeability there between those magazines for those weapons. I've been using the RPK recently, and I've been rather disappointed with how many rounds it seems to take down some of the fatter and more armored puppets. So, not so sure about this one anymore. Again, the ammo is not that common, though it should be. So I look to other solutions. That brings us to the UMP-45. And I'll talk about the Tommy gun at the same time, since it's not listed here and it's in the same caliber as the UMP-45. The UMP-45 is kind of a modernized Tommy gun. It, however, at least in the game, doesn't have a drum magazine available for it. But the magazines it does use are fairly good capacity. It's easy to accessorize. You can put a suppressor on it. And 45 seems to be pretty darn common in the game right now. That might be because they're trying to provide the player the ammunition for the new Tommy gun. I noticed that the loot tables seem to favor the new items in the game, because they, I guess, want players to get a chance to try out the new items more easily. But there it is. 45 ACP is pretty darn common in the game right now. And the UMP 45 hits harder than the 9mm MP5, as far as I can tell. And it will reach out to typical puppet and armed NPC distances in SCUM on a PvE server. So for primary weapons, these are my two recommendations: the MP5 and the UMP-45. And I think if you cater to those, I don't think you'll go that wrong. The game also has the Springfield Armory or HS product VHS-2 bullpup rifle. It's got the old version, the CT, with the integral handguard plus sighting system. I find this sighting system to be kind of hard to use, because it blocks so much of your sight picture, just like the HK-G36, the oldest version, has a sighting system that blocks a ton of your sight picture. These two systems, I think they came out at a time when like soldiers didn't really do the gun up shuffle much. Like, what you tended to do was carry your rifle at a position called port arms or diagonal across your upper torso, and you would run from cover to cover. And then once you got behind cover, then you would shoot from that covered position. So then you could use a sighting system uh, a bit better that blocked some of your sight picture. Um, Whereas if you were doing a gun up shuffle, uh, where you're kind of like power walking, um, so that while you're holding your gun up, your sight picture isn't bouncing around much, like it would if you were running. Well, in that case, where you're wanting to use your weapon as quickly as possible, you want your sight picture to be as unobstructed as possible so that you can quickly spot targets while you're on the move. Well, what's better for that is the VHS-2 with the Picatinny rail on top. So now you can mount some of the other sighting systems that don't block your sight picture as much as the integral sight on the VHS-2 CT. Personally, I like the look of the VHS-2 CT, but once you try out the sighting system, you quickly want to go with the VHS-2 with the Picatinny rail instead. Now, that leaves assault rifles, and it brings us to launchers. Now, the AT-4, it's a single-use launcher, so you fire it and then you just discard the tube. I haven't really seen many of these. In fact, I haven't seen any this wipe yet. The improvised grenade launcher, I need to test this, but when I was trying to use it the other day, its range was extremely short. I don't want to say extremely short. I would say it felt like it was about half as distant as it should be. Now, maybe that's because it's an improvised grenade launcher. Maybe if I tried out the VHS BG at the same distance, maybe it would reach out to a more realistic range, but I need to try these out and test them more. But a 40 millimeter grenade launcher is a useful weapon for clearing out areas of puppets or NPCs, or putting a grenade through a window in a building and taking out everything inside the room in the building. I would say that these weapons are pretty useful, and you do find a 40 millimeter grenade every now and then. So over time, you can build up, you know, you could build up a little bit of a stock in the 40 millimeter grenades. That's the same goes for the RPG. I've found a few rockets so far this wipe for the RPG. The RPG seems to have a bit of drop on its projectile also. I don't know how realistic that is. I'd have to test it and compare it to what it's supposed to do. But yeah, if you're engaging mechs at distance, you kind of have to fire over the head of the mech a little bit in order to land the rocket on the mech. But I would say that these weapons are surprisingly useful, at least with mechs, and the 40 millimeter grenades can be useful as area of effect weapons against crowds of puppets. But I don't know that I would necessarily want to take up a rifle shoulder slot or a shoulder holster slot for one of these weapons. That's kind of something more I would want to bring along in a vehicle in case I needed it. Oh, so I should talk more about the Tommy gun. So the Tommy gun in the game, it has a longer barrel, so it should, firing the same 45 ACP round, it should be more lethal than the UMP 45, I would think. But the only suppressor you can put on it presently is our improvised suppressors, and I'm not sure that you could mount any kind of optics to the Tommy gun. So, but as much 45 ammo as there seems to be in the world, uh, you might be able to use a couple of drum magazines for the Tommy gun and actually mow down some puppets if you need to, but you're going to make a lot of noise because you'll burn through the improvised suppressors pretty quickly. And then that's going to bring even more puppets so that you're going to need that Tommy gun. But with them having brought in the Tommy gun, I'm not sure that they're going to even consider bringing in the 45 ACP Mac 10 because the Tommy gun pretty much fills in that that niche. Although the Tommy gun is much heavier than the Mac 10, so I think that kind of covers it. I don't know if I left out any weapons that aren't on this wiki. At the end of it, for pistols, my favorite. Oh yeah, the Block 21 isn't here, is it? For some reason, they left the Block 21 off the list. So for pistols, I would say that the most useful in the game presently, because of how common the ammunition is, would be either the M9, the Tech 01 M9, or the Block 21, because of how much you can accessorize them. But for the sheer amount of ammo you're going to find, the Peacekeeper 38 I just seem to find more ammo for the Peacekeeper 38 than I can use with the Peacekeeper 38. But the way the Peacekeeper 38 reloads, you might find that it puts you in a position when you've got a horde closing in on you. For shotguns, the SDS or the Tech 01 490 are my favorite. For so-called sniper rifles would be the VSS or the SVD or the SCAR DMR, just because of how practical they are. But pretty much the VSS would be number one because the ammo does seem to be more common for it than for any of the others in that class. And for assault rifles slash submachine guns, it's got to be the MP5 and the UMP 45. Both for their abilities to be accessorized and for the commonality of their ammo, and for how applicable these calibers are in dealing with puppets and armed NPCs on a low population PvE server. Now, for a PvP server, the preferences are probably going to be drastically different. But these are my recommendations for a PvE server. So this was a long-winded survey, but I hope I broke it down for you so that, it kind of gives you an idea of some of the pros and cons of the different weapons in the game. And you can use this as a reference to guide you in the future because, I know a lot of players are not so-called gun nuts or gun whores. Um, but, um, and you just want to find out, what's the best thing I can carry right now. And I've tried to give you that advice. So thanks for listening.